Here is the 10-step process that goes into making every record. And I mean every record. It's the difference between different approaches is in the details. Everyone has a slightly different approach. There's different styles, tastes, workflows, and all that. Of course, different ways that producers do it, different ways that artists do it. But the general big picture thing that has to go into making a record is pretty much the same across every single project. And we're going to talk about that. And then you can, within that, find your own way of doing things. And this is the start of a series where we're going to walk you start to finish through this record making process. The first episode today is going to give you the overview. And then from the next episodes, we're going to go step by step through those. And then you can decide which of those things you can do yourself, you want to do yourself, where you still have knowledge gaps, where you need help with, what you need help with, whether or not you want to hire someone for certain things, whether or not you want to learn everything yourself. So all those things, but you can only make those decisions if you know what it actually takes to make a record. So yeah, my name is Benediktine. I am a mixing engineer. I used to be a full stack producer doing everything from pre-production to finished master. I've been doing that for more than 15 years. The last at this point, I think 6 years, I'm just fully focused on mixing, and I am also not just hosting this podcast, but I'm running the platform, the selfrecordingband.com, where we help self-recording artists through our coaching, where we basically walk them step by step through this record-making process, and they do the work themselves, but we guide them through it. We make sure they actually implement everything without cutting corners. We give them clear, precise next steps. We show them exactly what to do at each step of the process. We give them unlimited feedback on their music, and we help them finish the records they wanted to finish and make them sound the way they want them to sound like. So that's what we do there. If you're new to this podcast, hello, welcome, good to have you. If you are interested in making really exciting sounding records that you are proud of from your jam spaces and home studios, you have come to the right place. This is available on YouTube, but also all the podcast apps like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and so on and so forth. And if you are already a listener, welcome back. We really appreciate you. And as always, I'm joined by my friend and co-host, music producer, phenomenal, Manel Espinosa Berenguer from Alicante, Spain. Hello.
Hello, guys. So for you guys that don't know me, my name is Manel Espinosa, and I'm a mixing engineer and music producer from Spain. Always happy to turn your demos into great songs through a lovely process. And I'm very excited today because I think that this new series that we're going to start with this episode are going to be very valuable to our audience, because we're going to have the full process in some episodes. So that would be very useful, I think.
Yeah, I agree. Glad you say that. We have... it became kind of hard to know what to talk about after 295 episodes, where we talked about all the different things already in different ways and angles. And I mean, there's much to talk about, but still, at some point you feel like you have covered everything. So we thought we should maybe structure it a bit and start over from scratch, give you the basics, because there's the saying, the pros never don't do the basics. And so we cover all those basics again. We're going to go start to finish, and we're gonna then I think I'm gonna make this kind of the must listen to sort of series for everyone. If you are kind of interested in working with us through the coaching, or if you're just discovering this and we often get questions like, what should I start with? What should I listen to first? I'm just going to make this the go-to series where I'm like, start here, listen to this first, and then let's talk, because then you know what you're actually getting yourself into, what goes into making this. You have a much better understanding of the process. And and then in the show notes of all these episodes, you're going to find the related episodes, all the individual ones that we've done around the different topics. So what I'm planning to do is, if you go to the selfrecordingband.com/the number of the episodes. So for this one, it might be the selfrecordingband.com/296, or maybe the selfrecordingband.com/297, depending on what kind of number this is going to be. You just type in that number at the end of the URL, and then it takes you to the show notes page. The link to that is also in the description of this video or on your podcast app. And then on the show notes page, you'll find all the related episodes that we've already created on that topic. So if we start, let's say next week, we start with the writing part at the beginning of the process. We'll put all the episodes that are about writing and the creative part of the production process in the beginning there. And then when we get to the mixing process, then I'm going to attach all the mixing related episodes there. So then you can go through the process, and if you want to go even deeper on any of the steps, you can find all the matching episodes. So it's going to be this full system if you go to the website for these episodes. All right. So let's get to this. This is going to be a super quick one because today we're going to do the overview, and then we're going to go step by step from next week. All right. So step number 1, I kind of already outlined it at the end of the mindset episode that we just did, and step number 1 is what we call the foundation, which includes knowing what you actually want. Like defining your taste and style and who you are as an artist, your vision, what are you trying to say? What are you trying to make? Why are you even making this? Why does it matter to you? What's the story you're telling and all those things? And then the actual writing of the song. And it is not technical at all. It's what Rick Rubin in his book, for example, mentions as the creative process in the beginning before you get to the crafts part of the process later. The creative phase and the crafts phase. This is the purely creative phase. There are no rules. It's not technical. It's not supposed to sound great. It's not supposed to be the perfect takes. It's not about anything technical. It's about having an idea of what you want to create and starting the writing process with no limitations. Try every crazy idea you want. Come up with different chord progressions, melodies, words, lyrics, ideas. Do whatever inspires you, basically, to get to a first thing that you can then go deeper into. So, Manel, you are the expert on this more than I am, because even though I've did full production for a long time, I know that you have written much more than I did. So, without going too much into this, because we're going to have individual episodes on this, is there a part that I just missed for step number 1?
I don't think so. I would say the only thing that I would say is that sometimes in step number 1, you don't really know what you want, but it's more a phase. I would say it's more a phase of like experimentation with, lyrics, with your chords, with trying stuff. That's what I would say.
Yeah, cool. I agree. So I do a live kind of seminar every once in a while where I in a real world scenario, in a room full of people, I share these kind of 10 steps to making a record, and I do a DIY recording in your jam space kind of workshop with people. And on my outline for this step there, if I do this, I'm just looking at it, I have a couple of questions. So it's like, why, what, who is it for, how, who's going to do what, like these kind of questions. And sometimes we don't have answers for these. Sometimes we don't care about some of these, like who is it for? Maybe you don't even care. You just make it for yourself. That's totally fine. Just know what your vision and your goals are, what you actually like. Maybe you have to listen to a lot of stuff first before you can even start to create, because you don't know what you like yet. Maybe you just have to start playing to figure out and let the playing itself inspire you. Whatever works for you. Then I have the fact that you are a musician, songwriter, producer, and engineer in one. So you got to be at the beginning of the project. You definitely should think about if you really want to do all those roles, or if you might need to get help somewhere along the way, and plan accordingly. So build a team if necessary. Then there's the songwriting and arrangement, like we said, because at the end of the day, it's all about the music. That's the only thing that matters. It's not about the technical stuff. It's all just a means to an end. Everything that comes after this phase is just a means to an end. It's all about the music and the message that you're trying to create. And then it's about, the next thing here is like how you play, and the playing technique really matters, of course. It's also in the foundation kind of thing, where you're not good enough yet at certain things on your instrument. Maybe you need to bring in someone else. Maybe you need to practice some more, but it definitely makes a difference. And at the end of the day, the only thing that matters is this chain that happens where something comes out of a speaker, somebody hears it, it creates a reaction in their brain, an emotional reaction of some sort, and that's all that matters. What happens before the speaker, like how you get there technically, doesn't matter at all. Nobody cares. What matters is what comes out of the speaker and what it does to people. And in the first step, we got to have material that has a chance of doing that. And then later we're going to increase the chances that it actually does that. But it all starts with the material itself, which is your story, your way of telling it, your taste, your style, your vision, how you play it, and all those things. So this is the first step. Second step is the gear. We kind of have a hierarchy that we're going to walk you through in that episode. Things that matter and things that don't matter as much. And until you have taken care of the things that matter, you don't have to worry about the stuff that doesn't matter as much. So there's an order to things that will prevent you from burning money. I know, Manel, you have always been way more disciplined with this than I am, because you simply don't care as much as I did. I got better at this, but I used to spend I used to spend a lot of money on things that didn't make a difference in the beginning, and I got better at that over time. You did quite the opposite. You always consider very carefully what to buy and what not to buy.
Yeah, lately I think I'm starting to change, but yeah, my approach has always been to, only buy things that I really need. The thing is that sometimes you buy something that you don't need, but it's really useful. Like, for example, I recently bought a new de-esser, and I didn't know it was going to be that useful, but it actually makes a difference compared to the other de-esser. So, yeah.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about that at some point. And step 2 gear is, I call it a step because it doesn't sound like something you do, but it is a step in the process, because you need to make sure that you have what you need to get the result you want. And I'm not saying the most expensive, fancy stuff, but just the right tools for the job. So before you go on to record anything, just make sure you have the right things, especially like the right types of instruments and the right room to record it in, and like basic stuff like that. Because if you start off with the wrong tools, and this doesn't mean cheap tools, it can be cheap, it can be expensive. I'm not saying, please don't get me wrong here. It just means if you start off with the wrong tools, you're going to fight an uphill battle, and you want to set yourself up for a fun process. And that starts with having the essentials that you truly need, but also not wasting money on stuff you don't. In case you're wondering, we've tried, and gear doesn't make us superstars, or, Manel's Cory Wong guitar didn't turn him into Cory Wong for whatever reason. And my super expensive tube gear that I bought when I built my studio, for whatever reason, didn't turn me into Kurt Ballou, who was my hero at the time, one of my favorite producers. And I saw some pieces that he had, and I bought the same. And I don't know why, but my productions didn't sound like his. So I can tell you it doesn't work like that. So, so yeah. Step number 3 is the pre-production. And there we're going to talk about the goal, like why to do pre-production. Some people are confused about, what's the difference between the first rough demo and then the pre-pro. Maybe there is no difference for you, and that's fine. But we're going to talk about what we consider pre-production, why it even matters, what pre-production is in the context of making a professional record at the studio, and what you can learn from that for yourself. It includes, setting up the gear. It includes finding your sound, like basic gear setup, sort of. It includes finding your own kind of sound and workflow, the right monitoring and headphone mixes. Maybe you can also do that later, but it could be part of pre-production. Of the pre-production process to figure that out. It could be, figure out your room a little bit, learn that kind of stuff. It definitely includes making more sophisticated demos. So preparing the songs for the recording process, preparing yourself for the recording process, analyzing those demos, making a plan. And the goal of the pre-production at the end is is to have a blueprint, like a draft that you can then take and record for real.
Finding the right key and the right tempo.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because you could have, in the demo phase, you already had an idea in a song, but it doesn't mean that it was the right tempo and the right key, and now you can experiment with that. I agree. Then the next step is the recording setup, which is when the day you arrive at the studio and you do sound check. So now, just to recap, you have started with a basic idea that you've written. Then you got the gear that you needed for the job. Then you did pre-production, which is you turned the raw, very basic demo into a full kind of draft and blueprint and a better, more sophisticated demo. And you prepared yourself and the songs for the session before you go to the studio, sort of. Now we're at the studio, and now we're doing the proper recording setup. And this is the sound check, the day that you arrive at the studio and set everything up. And when I say the studio, it can be your own studio, but it's just the analogy of when you go to an actual studio. So this includes where to put what in the room. This includes the instrument setup, the tuning, intonation, putting on the right strings and drum heads and all that kind of stuff, dialing in the amps. This includes picking the right microphones and putting it in the right spots. This includes making final decisions when it comes to monitoring, what you want to hear, how loud things should be on your headphones. This includes making everyone comfortable in the room and creating an environment that you can actually record in well. This might include, preparing everything else, like creating simple checklists for everything so that the session goes smoothly, like everything that is the day one, the setting up of the stuff at the studio, so that you can then have a very relaxed session. I'm very curious when we get to this, Manel. I'm super curious to hear how you do some of these things when you are producing and recording stuff for other artists on your own, because of time reasons alone, and because you do, it's not always like this full record. It might be a song here and then a song there, maybe back and forth between different artists. I'm sure you have to have a kind of a different way of doing it, and I'm very curious to hear your process, how you make sure you don't skip important things, but you still stay effective and efficient and all that. So,
yeah, I'd say it's probably less structured. Like it's kind of back and forth, but yeah, we'll talk about it.
Yeah, what matters is, and that's what I mean, everyone can have a totally different way of doing it, a different workflow, and it can be back and forth. The only important thing is that you still do all of these things properly. And the precise order doesn't matter as much, and how you exactly do it doesn't matter as much. It's just that you don't forget to do any of those things at all. This is what matters. So,
yeah.
Cool. And then the next step is the actual recording session. So this is about when it happens. Like, this is focusing on the right takes, the right emotion, capturing the magic in the moment, the psychology in the recording session. If there's more people in the room, how you communicate, how you guide someone through the best takes, an order that makes sense, like in what order do you record things, what are the options there, and what are the pros and cons. This includes comping and editing on the fly. This includes ways to stay objective and take breaks and not like go too deep on stuff that doesn't matter. This includes having a good backup system during the recording so that you don't lose all your work, like all those things that are happening at the time that you actually record. This is going to be, the next step, which is step number 5. And then step number 6 is the kind of a thing that a lot of people don't, I know that a lot of people don't do properly, and other people don't do it because they already do it during tracking. So that's totally a thing. This is kind of the whole cleaning up the session, comping takes, and turning a messy capturing system into a more structured thing that you can then use in all the post-production steps. And some people are more chaotic and it still works for them. Other people are very structured. So we're going to talk about that. I'm curious to hear what you do there, how you handle that, Manel. What matters is that you can stay on top of things and you actually know what you're looking at when you're looking at your session, that you get rid of all the stuff that you don't need. You don't confuse your tracks. You're fast and intuitive. And so, this is kind of preparing your recording session for everything that comes afterwards. And now the next step, Manel, I'm curious here. I want to know right away if you actually do this or if you consider this just part of the recording, which is step 7 for me here is post-production. And what I consider post-production is some bands, when the recording's done, it's done. They capture what the band does and that's it. Totally fine. But then there are other artists and bands where they've recorded all their instruments, but then they want to add stuff that they actually don't do on stage or they can't play live. They want to add samples, effects, risers, all these kind of post-production effects that we talked about, impact sounds, things that make the song more dramatic, but it's not really an instrument. You just put certain sounds in there for extra effect, for extra drama. It can be layers of synth that you program after the fact. It could be all kinds of things. And depending on what it is, I guess you could call it, you just record another instrument, or you could call it post-pro, where you just drag and drop certain sounds into it to enhance what's already there. I just added this as a new step because for some people it is. Some even hire post-pro specialists for this, to do this. So I don't know how you see this. Maybe it's just part of of your recording session to do that.
Yeah, for me, it would be just part of the production/recording part. It's not... Sometimes maybe it could be called post-production because it's something that you do after the normal production. But normally I would say for me, that's just one more instrument in the whole spectrum. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah, I agree. So it can be that there's nothing wrong with that, as long as you do it when it's required, or don't do it because you intentionally don't need to do it. It's fine.
Yeah.
Then there is the editing process, which means you take all the things that you recorded and then you correct any mistakes that are distracting. You might have a perfect take that just feels awesome and you wanted to keep it because of how it feels, but maybe there's a little hit there that was slightly early or one that was slightly late. And instead of throwing away the otherwise perfect take, you can just fix that one thing and it's done. Or you might want a very mechanical, like gridded sounding thing because it's part of your aesthetic. Then you can quantize things. Or maybe you just love when things are tight and together, and you can also quantize. It doesn't mean it always kills the vibe. Maybe it means that the take is good, but if you just moved it a tiny bit to the right, it would feel even better and slightly late. Whatever it might mean, it might mean that there's a little flat note in there, and correcting that, now it's spot on, but the vocal feels great, so instead of re-recording, you just tune that one little note. It might mean that there's noises in there that you can get rid of. So editing is not meant to make your stuff sound lifeless. It's not cheating. It's not wrong. It's always been done. It's been done back in the day, like decades ago on tape. They did it with razor blades and cut the tape. So it's just a very normal part of the process. Like movies get edited. Not everything that's being shot ends up being in the movie. And so music gets edited the same way. Movies get color graded and whatever after the fact. And you can like do certain corrections with music as well. It's just a normal part of the process. It's not fake or bad or anything. Some people are so afraid of editing, but it's not bad at all. So we're going to talk about that part of the process. Then after editing, there's two more things left, which are mixing and mastering. And this is one of the most common questions, I guess, we get for steps 9 and 10, mixing and mastering, is what is the difference between the two? Yep. And I want to ask you, Manel, do you remember, like, was there a time when you were confused about that as well, when you were not sure what mixing and mastering were, or was it really clear to you from the beginning? Because I honestly can't remember, really. I don't think I ever had that question, really. I kind of learned pretty early on what they were, but it seems to be a very common thing that people confuse the two. Some people would even request a mastering quote from me, and then it turns out they mean mixing. And like, so I don't know, was it the same for you that you confused the two?
I never confused the two. Like, I always knew there was a difference, but I had no idea about what happened in the mastering process other than it sounded normally with more volume, like louder. Yeah. Other than that, I didn't know what were they doing.
Okay.
I knew like the main difference for me was like mixing, you have lots of tracks. Mastering, it's only one track.
Yeah.
Right. But yeah, I didn't know.
Okay. But that has changed. You now know.
Yeah. I know. No. Yeah.
Would you say, I'm just trying to think of, would you say that mastering is when you do it yourself, like we assume that people want to do everything themselves, like would you say mastering is still a creative process that makes things sound better? Or if you mix and master yourself, is mastering more like a technical step that makes things louder and then a few technical things, but it's not really about the sound anymore? What is it for you?
Mm, ooh, I think it's more a technical thing because I tend not to change that many things in the mastering part. I like to separate it from mixing. So like I have a different template for mastering. But normally I don't do that many creative decisions there.
Okay. Okay.
Sometimes I would add some sort of saturation or something like that, which I would consider creative, but it's a very minimal thing.
Okay. Yeah, I agree. I think I just thought of this question because I think the more people do themselves, the less creative the mastering kind of becomes. Because if you we're going to get deeper into this on the extra episodes, but just so you know, mixing is taking the individual tracks and turning them into one for the first time, sort of, where you mix. That's also why it's called mix down, where you mix from a lot of tracks down to just a stereo track. And you do everything you can to make it sound awesome and to get the message and vibe and sonics, and like the message and vibe and feeling across sonically, and then the mastering, like and so when you do that, and then you also master yourself, you would, like, you've already done everything you can to make it sound awesome in the mix. So what would you do in mastering, basically, you know? And
Yeah.
if someone else does the mastering, then it becomes more of a creative process to a degree, because the other person is more objective, has a fresh pair of ears, a different room, different speakers, different, situation, and then they can add or subtract things that you might not have heard, or it just adds this objective new layer to it. Whereas if you master yourself, I mean, if there was so much that, if there were so many things you could do to make it sound better, you would already have done it in the mix. And so it becomes more like this technical process where you make things louder. But all that being said, the mastering is taking the finished mix and then turning it into a final product that you can then release on any medium or platform that you want. So you create the final deliverables for streaming, for vinyl, for CD, for all the different platforms, whatever it is that you're making. You're doing final quality control. You make sure it translates well to all of those systems. You embed the metadata. You do the sequencing, the transitions, the order of the songs, all that kind of stuff. And then you create the final files that can then go to distribution or manufacturing. And this is mastering. And then after those 10 steps, you'll have a record or a single or whatever it is that you do. And from next week, we're going to go through all of these steps, and then you'll have a complete series of what goes into it.
Good fun.
Good fun, yeah. It's also going to be good to compare our processes here and see if we do the same order or not. I know it's going to be a little different, but that's fine. And I'm interested in hearing how you approach certain things. And then I hope that at the end of this, you're going to have a full series that you can listen to that gives you, all those steps. And then, like I said, if you go to the show notes pages of each individual episode, you see the episodes that belong to that we've done in the past. And then you can go really deep on some topics, and you can decide what you want to focus on, what you want to focus on first, what you want to learn. And you get a much better idea of the entire record making process. Yeah, if you already know that, you know what, I don't want to do any of that, I just want to be an artist and musician, and someone else should just do that for me, then I highly recommend you go and hit up Manel, because he is doing start to finish productions with people, and he's going to walk you through this exact process. The way he does it, it's not the exact order and stuff, but the way he does it with his lovely process that he always mentions. But he's going to make sure that you can fully be an artist, and you can fully focus on being what you can do best and what you want to be. And he's going to take care of the technical stuff, and he's going to bring out the best version of you and help you make the art you've always wanted to make. And so if that is something you want to do, and you don't want to do it all yourself, you can still listen to this series so you have an understanding of what's going to happen, but then you can hire Manel to help you bring it to life. Right, Manel? Yeah.
Yeah. And also you can hire Benedict to mix it.
Yeah, we can collab on this too. Exactly.
And that will be bringing it to super life, you know.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, so go to manelitomusica.com or benedictine.com if you're interested in our studio services. And if you know you want to do it yourself, and you want to learn all those things step by step, and you want someone to guide you through that and make sure you don't cut any corners and you do all these things properly with your own music, you go to the selfrecordingband.com/coaching and you apply for one of our coaching spots where we just guide you through it all. You do the work, you implement it, but we tell you exactly how and what to do at each step of the process. We're not going to dictate what it should sound like. You're making the decisions. It's your taste, your vision, your style, your record. But once we know what you want and what your taste is, we will help you make it come out of the speakers. So you just focus on implementation. We make sure you have the information you need, the feedback you need, the guidance you need, and always a clear next step. And at the end of it, you'll have your record, and it's going to save you years of trial and error and back and forth. And you will have full creative control over the entire process because a professional is going to be by your side and make sure you do it right, but you make the decisions. And you can finally produce with confidence. So those are your options. For now, I want to thank you for listening to this episode, and we're going to see you next week. On to a fantastic 2026, everybody.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.